We can learn so much from reading about where people were in the past and their experiences from the past. Cortes and Tenochtitlan. Hernando Cortes was a Spanish explorer and conquistador, and he landed on the coast of Mexico in 1519. Learning of the powerful Aztec Empire and its capital of Tenochtitlan, Cortes traveled over 100 miles inland to find the city and claim the empire for Spain. At the time, the city of Tenochtitlan was home to over 100,000 people and one of the largest cities in the world. In August of 1521, the Spanish and their Native American allies defeated the Aztecs and conquered the city. The Spanish leveled Tenochtitlan and built Mexico City on the site of the Aztec capital. Primary sources, such as the accounts written by Hernando Cortes and other Spanish officials, are the only surviving writings that we have of this once great city. Read the following description of Tenochtitlan, written by Hernando Cortes. Use this description to help you answer the questions below. Discuss your answer with the class. We're going to discuss it right here today, but as I'm reading this, the first thing that you should do if there's any questions that are involved with a primary source is go and read the questions first so you kind of have an idea of what you're looking for in your analysis. So, number one, what are some of the objects and structures that Cortes sees in Tenochtitlan? So we're going to be looking for those objects and structures. What does the primary source tell us about the city? So basically, what does Cortes' account tell us about the city, and what does Cortes tell us about the people of Aztec? So we got to dig in and analyze that information. What technology does Cortes mention in his account that shows that the Aztecs were able to adapt to this environment? Three very good questions and answers that we can learn by reading first-hand accounts of Hernando Cortes. This great city of Tenochtitlan was built on the Salt Lake, and no matter by what road you travel, there are 2 leagues from the main body of the city to the mainland. There are 4 artificial causeways leading to it, and each is as wide as 2 cavalry lances. The city itself is as big as Seville or Cordoba. The main streets are very wide and very straight. Some of these are on land, but the rest are all the smaller ones. They are half on land, half canals where they paddle their canoes. All of the streets have openings in places so that the water may pass from one canal to another. Over all these openings, and some of them are very wide, there are bridges. There are, in all districts of this great city, many temples or houses for their idols. They are all very beautiful buildings. Amongst these temples, there is one, the principal one, whose great size and magnificence no human tongue could describe. For it is so large that within the precincts, which are surrounded by a very high wall, a town of some 500 inhabitants could easily be built. All around the inside of the wall, there are very elegant quarters with very large rooms and corridors where the priests live. There are as many as 40 towers, all of which are so high that in the case of the largest, there are 50 steps leading up to the main part of it. And the most important of these towers is higher than that of the Cathedral of Seville. Now, what were the objects and structures that Cortes sees in Tenochtitlan? Well, if you paid close attention, you would notice that in his description of Tenochtitlan, he talks about 2 different topics. He covers transportation and he covers architecture and structures. He talks about roads. He talks about causeways. He talks about streets, canoes, canals, all having to do with how to get in and out of the city. You can tell that that's one of the things that he's most in all about, right? He calls it the great city. He talks about beautiful buildings. He talks about temples. He talks about, rooms, corridors, right? He brings up houses. Where's the houses at? I know I talked about houses. Okay. We'll have to look for that one. But he definitely, towers, right? There it is. Temples and houses for their idols. So there's two different categories that he's focused on at this time. So in this particular section on this question, we could definitely talk about what he saw as far as transportation goes and what he saw as far as architecture and building goes. Then, what does the primary source tell us about the city? Well, the source tells us that the city was beautiful. It was elegant. He talked a lot about the structure and how much engineering they did. So the city itself is, constructed very beautifully. When he uses these words, it makes me think that it is a very clean city. Otherwise, he would use, more of a negative pattern of words. He also tells us about the Aztec people. If this beautiful city, this elegant city, right, has so many different feats of engineering and buildings, and transportation, it must mean that these people are very intelligent and they're very hard workers to be able to do this. They built a city on top of a lake, which, is cause for, years of, trying to figure things out. So what technology does Cortes mention in his account that shows the Aztecs were able to adapt to their environment? Well, their environment is on top of a lake. So if you took the two categories, such as transportation and architecture, which one of those categories was basically to adapt to that environment? Well, let's think about it. Building structures. Wouldn't they have built temples and towers and pyramids and houses regardless of where they were? So that really doesn't go with being adapted to the environment. But when it comes to travel, like causeways, canals, canoes, they have to use a lot of water situations. So, or because they have a lot of water situations, they have to use those things. So that would be the area in which I would write about, because those are the things that they had to adapt to their environment. I hope that made sense. If you have any questions, comment on your Google Classroom, or send me a comment, and I'll try to cover any questions that you have.